So you dipped your toes into the mechanical keyboard game and picked up something basic, like this $23 keyboard from Kemove that comes complete with switches, stabilizers, and keycaps. It's a great choice for a beginner who is looking to get their hands on a mechanical keyboard and perhaps have no experience or don't even want to try taking things apart from the get-go. But you've watched my videos and got jealous that yours does not type like that. Here are some ways to make this $23 keyboard sound heavenly, from easy ways to more difficult ones. Word of caution, you are going to have to get your hands dirty from the get-go. Let's get started. Stabilizer rattle is the most important distinction between a good keyboard and a bad one. Easiest way to fix this is just to throw out the stabilizer, right? The only problem is that stabilizers are important because it balances longer keycaps. Otherwise, good luck trying to type on a seesaw. The very first thing I would do that comes at little to no cost is to check the balance of the stabilizer bar. To check the balance, put the bar on a flat surface, press down one end of the bar and tap the other. You shouldn't hear any sound when tapping. If there is, it means that end which you are tapping on is lifting up from the surface. So use something like a plier or tweezer and twist it the opposite way. Go back and forth between the two ends until the sound completely disappears when you tap the bar. Also, if your stabilizers have these legs that jut out, cut them off as well. These causes rattle too when the stabilizer hits the PCB since they are also uneven. Plus, if you have plate mounted stabilizers like this one, check that the housing is nicely seated as well. If it is loose, use some tape to fill the gap and tighten up the tolerance. PCB mounted stabilizers like Dierya or TX usually doesn't have these issues. Finally, I will then lube the housing to reduce scratch. In cheap keyboards especially, the stabilizer housings have poorer tolerances, so lube helps a lot by dampening the contact interactions. Cost-wise, a small container of lube costs about $10 to $20 depending on the volume you're getting, so really not that expensive at all. A hollow sounding acoustic is also another mark of a cheap keyboard. A hollow sound is a result of having too much empty space in the keyboard case, so when you type, sound waves are constantly being reflected, just like an echo in an empty cave. It is especially obvious in cheap plastic cases like this one, which is very light. Adding fillers like fabric or foam not only increase the weight of the keyboard, they absorb sound waves, making it sound fuller and denser. Just keep in mind to use something that won't conduct electricity, which will risk shorting the PCB. Additionally, like how stabilizers are lubed, switches need to be lubed too. Just a tiny bit of lube helps to reduce friction between the rails and the stem of the switch. You can't hear the difference sometimes, but it definitely makes typing much smoother. Unfortunately, you need to take a little while to dismantle all the switches and lube them individually. But trust me, it is worth it. Especially if your PCB is non-hot swappable, the difficulty rises quite a bit. Like this one here. Just a word of caution because I accidentally dropped the soldering iron onto the desk mat and now it left a huge gaping hole in it. Damn. Be really careful when soldering and desoldering, yeah? And since you would have lube left over from lubing stabilizers, there's no need to spend extra on this step. More often times than not, stock keycaps are of poor quality. They are thin and not very nice looking. If you like the sound and feel of them, sure, but to me, this one's got to go. And so, I recommend changing the keycaps next. For a deeper tone, I went with PBT keycaps, which are thicker than something like GMK or Signature Plastics that uses ABS and is lighter in weight. Coincidentally, PBT keycaps are often cheaper as well. If your keyboard is not hot swappable, or if it doesn't use MX compatible switches, this step will become very tedious. Like the one I have here is soldered, so I have to desolder each switch in order to change them out. After removing the stock switches, it's time to pick your switch of choice. Maybe you've watched a video somewhere and wanted to use the same switch, or you've been to a local store and tried out some tactiles. Pick one and stick it in, or solder it in my case. I'm using Holy Pandas that are compatible with the 3-pin MX slots. They have also been lubed and filmed prior to this video. Before I forget, if you're looking to buy your first mechanical keyboard or something low cost to tinker with, Dierya is definitely a good option to go with. And yes, use code BENFROMSG to save an additional 10% off. Links in the description below. One final mod that I did not mention is perhaps to do a PE foam mod. What you need is some foam that you can find easily from packaging material, put it in between the PCB and plate, and push the switches through the foam into the PCB. It's that simple and cheap. However, I personally dislike this mod, so I didn't use it here because I don't like the sound it gives. But that's just personal preference. It is by far the cheapest way to get a keyboard sounding good, so do it if you want to try it out. Alright, so here's what you got in the beginning. And here's what you got after all the mods. Which one do you like more? See ya!